To a brand new series today called Genesis, where it all began, Father, thank you. Thank you for the chance to worship you this morning, just to gather, have fellowship, and just to joy being together with God's people in this place. And now, God, as we talk about you, as we talk about your existence, God, open up our hearts and minds. Maybe someone in here is wrestling with doubts or unanswered questions. And God, I pray that your Spirit would just open us up to be ready to receive. Because it's not just about believing in you, God, it's what we do with that belief. And so help us move forward in our faith. In Jesus' name, amen. The Bible starts off like this, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. Psalm 119:1 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Job 38:4 says, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Isaiah says, I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their host. Romans chapter 1 says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. The focus that we're going to have during this study in the book of Genesis, especially the early chapters, is we're not going to get caught up in evolution, creation. We know it was created. The Bible is our authority, but whether it was a 6 literal days or 6 metaphorical days that could have been millions of years, I'm going to address both those issues. But the real issue, the purpose for which Genesis was written, was not to give us a scientific explanation of how the world was made. The purpose of the book of Genesis is that you and I might know God, that we might know him personally and intimately. And Romans here says that we can know his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature by looking at the things that he has made. Psalm 14:1 says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Maybe my favorite and most famous, maybe my second favorite atheist is a guy named Sam Harris. And right after 9/11, he wrote a book called The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason. And it was a scathing indictment on all religions. And it was turned down by just about every publisher that he went to. They just thought there was no appetite for anti-religion books. And yet, when a publisher finally published it, it stayed on the New York bestseller list for 33 weeks. And a lot of Christians responded to his book, critiquing it. And then he came out with another book, because there was so much response by Christians. And this was the title of his second book, Letters to a Christian Nation, where it takes apart religion and Christianity in particular. He hates religion. He sees religion as not just people that are misinformed, but people who are actually dangerous to society. The same year, Richard Dawkins came out with his best-selling book called The God Delusion. And in this book, this is one of his quotes from the book, if this book works as I intend, religious readers who open it will be atheists when they put it down. 3 million copies have sold in 35 different languages. The following year, another very famous atheist named Christopher Hitchens said this, God is not great, how religion poisons everything. That was the title of his book. Stephen Fry, I'm going to inundate you early on with some atheists here, but Stephen Fry is a very outspoken critic of religion and atheist from Great Britain. I want you to watch about a 2-minute video clip of him responding to what he would say to God. Take a look at this.
Suppose what Oscar believed in as he died, in spite of your protestations, suppose it's all true, and you walk up to the pearly gates and you are confronted by God. what will Stephen Fry say to him, her, or it?
I will basically, what's known as theodicy, I think. I'd say bone cancer in children? What's that about? How dare you? How dare you create a world in which there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world which is so full of injustice and pain? That's what I would say.
And you think you're going to get in on
No,
that?
but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to get in on his terms. They're wrong. Now, if I died and it was Pluto, Hades, and if it was the 12 Greek gods, then I would have more truck with it, because the Greeks they didn't pretend not to be human in their appetites and in their capriciousness and in their unreasonableness. They didn't present themselves as being all-seeing, all-wise, all-kind, all-beneficent. Because the God who created this universe, if it was created by God, is quite clearly a maniac, utter maniac, totally selfish. We have to spend our life on our knees thanking him? What kind of God would do that? Yes, the world is very splendid, but it also has in it insects whose whole life cycle is to burrow into the eyes of children and make them blind. They eat outwards from the eyes. Why? Why did you do that to us? You could easily have made a creation in which that didn't exist. It is simply not acceptable. So, atheism is not just about not believing there's a God, but on the assumption that there is one. What kind of God is he? It's perfectly apparent that he is monstrous, utterly monstrous, and deserves no respect whatsoever. The moment you banish him, your life becomes simpler, purer, cleaner, more worth living, in my opinion.
Now, let me say this in fairness to him. He was caught off guard by that question, and he is describing a God that he doesn't believe in. But what is interesting, you could press in a little bit and say, okay, well, who says that what you say is good or right or wrong or bad? See, here's the thing. As we proceed today, similar to last week, our goal is not just to ask the question, does religion work? The question we're wanting to ask, is it true? Is it true? See, something that is true can be both true and unsettling at the same time. Okay? When my daughters come home with their first boyfriend, it is both true and unsettling. And so our question is really, what is true? And is faith mean that we have to deny reason? What we're going to find over the course of the next few weeks is that we can both have faith and reason. In fact, both are necessary to following the God who is. And so, we should know what we're stepping toward as we contemplate the questions of God and his existence, whether he exists or not. We should know and be informed as much as we can what it is that we are moving toward. And so what I want to do today is not so much try to prove the existence of God. I think that's hard to do, actually. But I want to talk about a universe and what must be true if there is no God. If there is no God, then there are certain things that must be true. For example, the first one is that the idea of conscious and mind is an absolute illusion. The illusion of consciousness. As Christians, we believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. In other words, we have a mind, we have a soul, we have a will. We are created in the image of God, and we'll dig down deep into that in a couple of weeks. But if the universe without God, think about it, if the universe that exists as we know it, even with modern science, it is governed by the law of physics, if that is true, that there is no God, then there is no you. It's just an illusion that there is a you. You are just chemicals, you're just biology, you're just chemistry, you're not a soul, you're not a mind, You're nothing but chemicals that have come together and over billions of years randomly to produce a physical body that responds to the stimulus and the environment around you. I am not Adam. I'm just a bunch of chemicals that my parents threw out and labeled with 4 letters, ADAM. But here's what I know. You don't want to be treated like biology. You don't want to be treated like just a bunch of chemicals. You want to be loved. You want to be known. You want to be respected. The other illusion is the illusion of will. So we have the illusion of mind and consciousness, but we also have the illusion of will. According to the Bible, you've been given a will, and that will has the ability to choose. You have the ability to choose God, to follow God, or to not. That is one of the biggest gifts that God has given us in terms of what it means to be human. He has given us a will to say yes or to say no. And without God, we have to accept, and this is where most atheists are, you have to accept that there is no free will. The idea of having a free will is just an illusion. You don't make decisions based on information and will. You are just responding to environment and stimuli. Stephen Hawking said it this way: man is determined, but it does not matter because you can't do anything about it because it's determined. Later, he kind of poked fun at his own position of determinism, and he said this: I have noticed, though, that even people who claim that everything is predetermined, they still look before they cross the street. And this point baffles me of all the other illusions. And it's because people like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, the guy on the video, they want to convince us that there is no God. But if everything is determined and we have no free will, what's the point of trying to convince us of anything? The other illusion is the illusion of value. Genesis is a narrative, but it is also flavored and sprinkled, the early chapters, with this poetic rhythm to it. Over and over we see, it is good, it is good, it is good. And it climaxes after Adam and Eve are made, and God says, it is very good. In a world without God, where there is no mind, there is no will, there can be no value. There is no inherent value, there's only ascribed value. And the fact that we value a little baby over a cockroach, well, we just made that up. It's just responding to the environment, it's just chemicals, it's just biology. There cannot be love, there cannot be choice, there cannot be beauty, there cannot be value. We are no more significant than a rock. And here's part of the problem with people who really have intellectual integrity and are atheists. They tend to become nihilists. In fact, I met this Friday with a nihilist. He's reached out to me twice. He's never been to this church, but he likes the sign. And so he calls me when his friends get tired of him and no one else wants to spend time with him. That's what pastors are for, and that's okay. But we talk about many different things. I buy him lunch, and I enjoy him. He's a very, very, very smart guy, very intelligent. And by the way, intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing, so I'll just say that. Any of you who've raised teenagers, you know that. But this is what he said to me, because he is a tortured soul. His intellect, his mind, as he goes down with the implications of there being no mind, no will, no value, what is the purpose of anything? He's on the verge of suicide on a regular basis. And this is what he said to me. Now, this is his words, not mine. He says, sometimes, I said, you're a really smart guy, and I think that's why you struggle so much. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I often wish I had Down syndrome, because they're happy. You think about it. The implications of justice, fairness, equality, those don't really exist. We make it up. And in place of Christian ethics, this is what Friedrich Nietzsche said. He said simply that people should do whatever makes them happy. You want to know where our current American culture got it from? From him. Well, if it makes you feel good, it must be okay. And he goes on and he says, as evolution and nature dictates, those stronger people can do what they want and the weaker folks have to deal with it. It was his master and slave philosophy. You know, the church has made a lot of mistakes over history. The church has done a lot of bad things over history. And there's no doubt about that. But when you look at what atheism has produced just in the 20th century alone, think of World War II. Think of Russia. Think of Cambodia. Think of China. The millions upon millions of people who have died because of the philosophy and the belief that is naturally brought about because of atheism. The founder of Planned Parenthood is a woman named Margaret Sanger. This is what she said: the most urgent problem today is how to limit and discourage the over-fertility of the mentally and physically defective. You know who she was talking about? In her mind, who she was talking about poor white people and black people. We need to limit their ability to reproduce, because if they reproduce, they over-reproduce, they have lots of kids, they're going to take over the world. And we need just the intelligent, the more evolved people to reproduce. And that was the beginning of abortion. That's where it stems from. She also was a big supporter of the Supreme Court decision that declared constitutional, this was constitutional back in the Jim Crow era, the forced sterilization of the unfit. And by the way, they determined who was unfit. And that ruling allowed the maiming via involuntary hysterectomies of thousands of black women in the South during the Jim Crow era. See, that is what is going to happen to our world. Might makes right. If you take God out of the equation, it will always be the case. And then you have the illusion of meaning. Okay, we have the illusion of mind, the illusion of will, the illusion of value. Now we have the illusion of meaning. And the Bible tells us pretty plainly what our purpose is. Our purpose is to be with God, to live the with God life, to have a friendship with God, to be a good steward of everything in this world. Christians, because of what the Bible teaches about creation and about our purpose, ought to care more about our environment than anyone else. I was watching an NBA basketball game, and this is PETA's latest tactic. They go to NBA games, and they try to get on the floor and glue their hand to the wood floor. And I caught a glimpse of it. They usually don't keep the camera on these things because they don't want to encourage it more to happen. But man, there was cops on top of this woman so fast, and they drug her off very quickly to handcuff her and arrest her. I admired their care for the world that we live in. But as Romans chapter 1 tells us, that if we eliminate God, we will create a God, and the most common God that has been created throughout history is nature. Because nature is the biggest, most powerful force that we can see and perceive, and so it is human nature to worship. You will worship something or someone. And so whatever someone decides, remembering that we have no free will, the meaning of life will be what it is. It really doesn't matter, though. You make it up. But again, there is no love. There is no joy. There's no pleasure. That's just all biology and chemicals responding to the environment that it is in. Another assumption that we must accept if there is no God is that something came from nothing. It is obvious that there is something. You are something. You're sitting on something. You're in something. You drove here in something. And so the assumption is that something exists. But without God in the picture, all that is came from nothing. By the way, you know what I call that? Faith. Takes a lot of faith to be an atheist. See, for an atheist, there is no real coherent theory for how something came from nothing. They talk about the Big Bang and various other theories, but Big Bang is the current at the moment. But time, space, matter, all the laws that govern the universe came into existence. But how? Who? What? Richard Dawkins says this: the cosmology, that is the creation of the world, is waiting on its Darwin. We're waiting for someone to come along and give us an explanation as to why there is anything at all. I remember being in Swaziland, up in the dormitories with some of the students that I worked with, and one guy came in, he sat on the bed, and he knew who I was, and he says, "I'm an atheist." Oh, okay, appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know. He wanted to argue with me, and I don't get into arguments, but I'm happy to discuss and ask questions. So I said this: okay, so you're an atheist. Tell me, are you able to know all that there is to know? No, I mean, of course, nobody can know everything there is to know. And he was a smart kid. I said, are you willing to accept that there is something that you don't know? Yeah. Could that something that you don't know, could it be God? I said, are you able to be everywhere at once? Or are you limited by time and space? Well, duh, Okay, I said, could you accept? Are you willing to accept the fact that somewhere you are not, that God could be there? And what my goal was to kind of move him from being a staunch atheist without really thinking about it, based on faith. I said, what if you called yourself an agnostic? An agnostic means not knowing. An atheist means no God. Agnostic means not knowing. And there's two kinds of agnostics. One is a stubborn, unwilling to look at and explore agnostic. And then there's an honest agnostic who says, yeah, I don't know, but I want to know. If there's information, if there's something. And sometimes agnostics will say little prayers like this. In fact, my friend, who's a nihilist that I met with on Friday, told me 3 months ago he was in such dire straits. He prayed to a God that he doesn't believe in. He said, God, show me if you're real. And you know what happened to him in that moment? He said, I felt something. I felt like God hugged me. And then he said this, well, or maybe it was the devil. Another illusion or assumption that we have to accept if there's no God is this: that first life emerged from no life, without help. Now, because most atheists believe the universe is 4.5 billion years old, we just kind of assume that given enough time, anything is possible. Richard Dawkins said it this way: we know it happened because we are. Which again, by the way, sounds like faith. I like the way Francis Collins put it. Francis Collins was put in charge of the Genome Project. He served Presidents Clinton, Presidents Bush, and Presidents Obama. And I think he's still highly prominent with all that went on with COVID. But this is what he said. He said, you must believe the universe moved from lifeless matter to the digital elegance of DNA. When you think about the world in just a single cell, how beautiful and how complex this world is, down to the cellular level, how complex it is. You have to believe that there is no God, that it all just happened by accident, by chance. And finally, the last one I'll give you is that natural selection is responsible for all life. This is a strong belief of evolutionists. They don't know how we got first life, but all life after that was simply a cause of natural selection. Once again, Richard Dawkins said, think about it. on one planet, and possibly only one planet in the universe, molecules that would normally make nothing more than a complicated chunk of rock gathered themselves together into chunks of rock-sized matter of such staggering complexity that they are capable of running, jumping, swimming, flying, seeing, hearing, capturing, and eating, and other such animated chunks of complexity, capable of thinking and feeling and falling in love with other chunks of complex matter. See, he understands the implications of his beliefs and his assumptions. But then he says this: before Darwin, we had no idea how matter assembled itself into such complexity and reproduced to get us to where we are today. But thanks to natural selection, now we understand how the trick was done. Now, from my perspective, we'll give these motorcycle guys a chance to go by. Sometimes they stop and take pictures of the sign. Man, it's a herd of them, huh? From my perspective, and I'm not a smart guy, I'm the first to admit it, I'm not a scientist, I'm a simple guy, but it's impossible, as I think about this, the beauty, the complexity of the human eye, for example. I love to watch the nature shows and just the beauty of nature, of just a redwood tree. How does water go from the ground and go up 200 feet against gravity? It is such an amazing and beautiful world that we live in. But from my perspective, it seems to me that there is some force behind it all. There is some unknown force behind all of it, guiding it, working in it, in the midst of it, to produce what we have today with such beauty and complexity. And the Bible tells us that there is, and it is God. Now, let me just kind of throw a couple things out as we kind of wind down. Again, I'm not trying to prove the existence of God to you. I'm simply saying if you don't believe that there's a God, then you have to accept these assumptions and these illusions. There is what is known as the Goldilocks principle. You understand Goldilocks, right? It was just right. And even atheists, when they look at the universe, as vast as it is, as big as it is, as beautifully and complex as it is, there seems to be this fine-tuning constant that makes it all possible to exist. The way Tim Keller says it in his book, by the way, this is a great read if you want to read a great book about this. It's called The Reason for God. Tim Keller says this: it's as if God had rolled a cosmic welcome mat for the earth to begin and prosper. But let me tell you how incredibly fine-tuned this world is. The gravitational pull. It's exactly what it needs to be. The size of the sun is exactly what it needs to be. The size of the earth is just right. The earth is the exact distance from the sun that it needs to be. Otherwise, it would be too hot or too cold, and life would be impossible. The distance from the moon to the earth is just right. It creates the perfect gravitational pull. It controls the ocean tides that are just right. The earth spins on its axis at just the right speed. Otherwise, we would fly off if it was going too fast, right? But actually, what's so important about that is the rhythm of warming and cooling of the earth is just right. And then think about this, water. We could not exist without water. 98% of the world's population, some 7 billion people, live within like 5 miles of a body of water. It's colorless, it's odorless, and it's tasteless. It is the perfect margin between boiling and freezing. It's a universal solvent. It allows for various chemicals, minerals, and nutrients to reach the smallest blood vessels in our body. It's chemically neutral. It allows food, medicines, and minerals to be absorbed by our body. Water has the ability to be absorbed by plants and trees that actually flow upward against gravity. 97% of the Earth's water is in the oceans. 97% of it is full of salt. That means 3% of it is drinkable. And without fresh water, we would die. But there's this amazing system, and it just kind of happened randomly by accident, right? It actually removes the salt. The water evaporates. It rises and forms clouds whereby it can be easily moved by the wind and dispersed all over the land. And it sustains life for vegetation, for animals, and for us. It's the perfect system of recycled and reused water. And it's all designed by God. The Goldilocks principle. There are so many things that are just right. And if you want to be honest about statistics, by the way, atheists hate math. You guys remember The Price is Right? Come on, if you're over 50, you remember The Price is Right. Let me use this example, and it's called the law of probability. It has 100 numbers on it, right? Between 1 and 100. What are the chances of it landing on 100 if you get up there and spin it? 1 in 100. Now, multiply that again and again up until you get 122 wheels. Now imagine every single one of them lands exactly on the right point. Is it possible? Is it probable? If you were to play the lottery, and I'm not a betting man, the house always wins. But imagine you played the lottery for 1 year every single day and you hit the jackpot every single day for a year. Okay? Is it possible? Is it probable? But the question I want to close with is not, does God exist? 98% of Americans still believe in God, some kind of God, some kind of force. James said it this way, the half-brother of Jesus. You believe in God? You believe in one God? You do well. Even the demons believe, and they shudder. It's not do you believe in God, but who do you believe God is? Who is God? What is he like? Is he a capricious, stupid, mean God that was described on the video? Now, we're going to talk about why there's so much pain and so much suffering in the world. We'll get to that in Genesis chapter 3. But I want to share the story as I close of Francis Collins. I shared about him earlier. He was the head of the Genome Project. He became a believer. I want to tell you his testimony in his own words. He says this, it was really as a medical student and later as a resident encountering the realities of what disease and the specter of death does to human beings that I began to wonder about this, that is the existence of God. Some of my patients were clearly relying very heavily on their faith as a source of strength in circumstances that were pretty awful. So he watched people die. He dealt with people with diseases that could not be cured or fixed. All he could do was provide comfort as they spent their last days on this earth. But he watched them die. He watched them live out their last days, and it impacted him. He said this, as I began to ask a few questions of those people, I realized that there was something very fundamental. I had made a decision to reject any faith view of the world without ever really knowing what it was that I was rejecting. So he believed there was no God. He was rejecting all faiths and all religions, but he didn't know why. He never knew what he was actually rejecting. And he said, that worried me. As a scientist, you're not supposed to make a decision without the data. It is pretty clear that I had not done any data collecting here about these faiths and what they stood for. I didn't want this conclusion. I was very happy with the idea that God didn't exist and had no interest in me. And yet at the same time, I could not turn away. I had to keep turning those pages. I had to keep trying to understand this. I had to see where it led, but I still didn't want to make a decision to believe. God became personal for me at that point. See, as Christians, we don't just believe in God, we believe in a God who is personal. And that really was the decision I was making, to believe not just in God, but in a God who wishes fellowship with me. That God is a God who both created the universe and also had a plan that included me as an individual human being. And that He has made it possible for me through a series of explorations to realize that it's not just a philosophy, it's a reality of a relationship. And so, in conclusion, while there are many atheists who are rejecting a God that does not exist, they're rejecting a God, and the way they describe God is not the God that I read about in the Bible. But my greater concern is that more and more people are embracing a God that also does not exist. A God who caters to their needs. A God who gives them whatever they desire. A God that simply exists to serve them. My favorite term is the vending machine God. If I put in the right coins and I push the right buttons, God will give me what I want. Both will be shocked. Both the atheist and the believer of this kind of God will be shocked and disappointed when they stand before the God who is. And so our study of Revelation, of Genesis, is our goal is going to be to know and understand more who this God is. And not just understand who He is, but who He is for you and for you and for me. And here's the astonishing thing to me about the Christian faith. Jesus, who claimed to be God, stepped into the world that He made. He was outside of it for all eternity, but He stepped into the world that He made. He stepped into time and space and matter, and He entered into the human condition with all of its pain, with all of its suffering, with all of its difficulty. And this little baby, when he entered into the human condition, had no political power, no financial influence, had no religious position, at least officially, and he came from a very insignificant part of the world. And yet today, we call it April 24th, 2022, because of this man. And because of His great love for us, in spite of us, He died, He rose again with a body 2.0. And the promise that He gave us is that one day you and I will die. And if our faith is in Him, if we trust Him, if we believe Him, then we too will one day rise with body 2.0. And so as you come to communion today, as you come to the table in just a moment, have you given your heart to God? Have you understood that not only does God exist, but that He wants a friendship with you? The Bible says in Revelation, and this is Jesus speaking, here I am. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. He's not going to impose Himself on you, but He's going to invite you. And He waits for you to invite Him into your life. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. The most intimate, most beautiful thing in ancient culture was to have a meal with someone. And Jesus wants to have a meal with you. As you come to the table and get communion, I know most of you in here have already done that, but if you haven't done that, just say a simple prayer. God, come into my life. Or if you're not ready yet to believe in God, say this simple prayer. God, if you're real, show me. Show me. And then be ready. Because He will. Perhaps in subtle ways, perhaps in surprising ways. Father, we thank You this morning for not just that You are, but that You are for us. And all this world that we see, as we're going to explore in the weeks to come, all of creation, God has purpose, has design, has beauty, has complexity. But it all points to You, the author of it all. The one who gave us a mind, who gave us a will, who gave us value. The one who looked at us and said, it is very good. And the one who came into this world lived a perfect and sinless life, and then died as a substitute for us. The perfect man who never sinned took our place. And God, that's what we celebrate this morning. That's what we come to this table for with grateful hearts, because you did that for us, because you desire us, because you love us, because you want to know us, and you want us to know you. And so help us, God, move down this journey of faith a little farther, a little deeper, more aware of who you are and who you are for us. And we pray these things, and we pray with grateful hearts this morning in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen.